Hey guys, we are Robin and Laura, the team behind backpackerguide.nz, and this is our 30 essential tips for backpacking in New Zealand.
To answer all your questions on working, travelling and living in New Zealand, we have put together this whopping list to help you from the moment you start preparing your trip to the moment that you leave New Zealand. Number 1, get yourself a working holiday visa. There is so much to do in New Zealand that you'll want to spend as much time here as possible.
A working holiday visa in New Zealand will allow you to stay in the country for up to 12 months and even allow you to work. That means that you'll be able to afford to stay longer and do more. There are over 40 countries which are eligible for a working holiday visa in New Zealand. So we've put in the description below a link that will detail if your country is eligible as well as how to apply.
Number 2, stay in hostels. What makes New Zealand such a backpacker-friendly country is its huge amount of hostels. Expect to pay between 20 to 30 New Zealand dollars per night in a dorm room, and that's with shared facilities like kitchen and common areas, and laundry.
We've stayed in over 100 amazing hostels in New Zealand as part of the web series New Zealand's Biggest Gap Year, so make sure to check it out. Number 3, travel in the shoulder season. New Zealand's summer runs from December to February and the country goes nuts at that time of the year. Everywhere is more crowded, prices are likely to be higher, and a lot of accommodation and activities are usually fully booked.
Despite what many tourists think, you can definitely enjoy New Zealand in the off-season and shoulder season. Mountain biking, hiking, whitewater rafting, bungee jumping, skydiving, it can all be done all year round in New Zealand.
For this reason, Laura and I love to travel in New Zealand between April and September. Which brings us to number 4, work in summer. This will free you up for traveling in the shoulder season, and there's heaps more work opportunity in summer in New Zealand, especially hospitality, tourism, fruit picking, and much more.
We have more than 800 job listings on backpackerguide.nz, as well as articles on how to find a job quickly in New Zealand, so be sure to check that out. We'll put the links in the description below.
Number 5, travel from south to north. Most tourists and backpackers arrive in Auckland and start traveling south from there. To avoid the big tourist and backpackers funnel, you may want to take a flight down to Christchurch or to Queenstown and start your travels from there.
This is particularly handy for those of you who want to rent a car or a camper van to travel New Zealand. Most car rental companies are desperate for people to bring vehicles back up north, so you can get much cheaper prices that way. Also, you could even score a car relocation deal, which means hiring a car or a camper van for free. We'll make sure to put a link to car relocation in the description below.
Speaking of car relocation, number 6 on our list is pick the best transport for you. This is something that every backpacker has an opinion on, but it's also the most personal choice you will have to make for your entire trip. So don't listen to anyone, just listen to yourself. Actually, listen to us telling you to listen to yourself.
That's right, there are pros and cons to each type of transport in New Zealand, whether it is taking the train, flying, renting a vehicle, buying a vehicle, taking one of the backpacker buses. Time, budget, and the sort of people that you want to meet along the way all relies on what transport method you choose.
Although we traveled with a massive camper van during New Zealand's Biggest Gap Year, this is definitely not the way of transportation that we would have used when we first arrived in New Zealand. We've done them all: hop on hop off bus, normal buses, car rental, camper van rentals, train, plane, and we have heaps of information about all of those on backpackerguide.nz, so make sure to check that out as well.
But number 7 on our list is, if buying a car, don't get scammed. There are some pretty questionable cars and camper vans knocking around New Zealand, and we found that out the hard way. Before buying a car or a camper van, you should do a car inspection, a test drive of the car, and also it's a good idea to do a pre-purchase inspection with a professional mechanic if you have no idea about cars. There's also some paperwork you need to look at, like the warrant of fitness, the certificate of registration, and the change of ownership.
Moving on from vehicle, tip number 8 is use the backpacking Facebook groups. There are heaps of backpackers in New Zealand and the community is super active. So just use the Facebook search bar and type backpacking in New Zealand. You'll find heaps of groups full of people that want to travel together, exchange tips and even sell bits and bobs that you may have forgotten to pack from back home.
Number 9, always have layers of clothing with you. A famous saying in New Zealand is 4 seasons in a day, and that's because the weather can change so rapidly. So even in your day pack in summer, always have an extra layer.
And number 10 on our list is hike until your shoes wear out. There are heaps of absolutely mind-blowing landscape in New Zealand and the best way to see them and cheapest way is to hike and hike again. The Department of Conservation of New Zealand does an amazing job of maintaining the tracks and signage, so even the complete beginner will have no chance to get lost and have a blast.
Number 11, try some work for accommodation. Now there are quite a few ways to work for accommodation in New Zealand, but the most popular two are either working in a hostel or woofing. Woofing is a term usually used to describe working 2 to 4 hours, 5 days a week in exchange for accommodation and food. Now we have quite a few of these opportunities listed on Backpacker Guide, and you can also become a member of Woof New Zealand. And number 12, be savvy when you hitchhike. Hitchhiking is legal and common practice in New Zealand, and it's a great way to meet locals. However, just know that there is an element of risk when hitchhiking. It's always a better idea to hitchhike with someone else, and if the driver looks a bit dodgy, just avoid.
Tip number 13, you are only in New Zealand once. Don't lock yourself up in work only to realize at the end of the year that you missed out on most of the amazing stuff that New Zealand has to offer. Make sure to plan accordingly and leave a lot of room for exploration, adventures and meeting new people, so at the end of the year you feel #no regrets. Our tip number 14 is book direct. The cheapest deal almost always come directly from the hostel, the activity provider and even the transportation company. This means that you just don't have to give a commission to a sales agent. And chances are that even if you find a deal cheaper somewhere else, they'll be able to match it. Booking direct doesn't only benefit you, it benefits the company too.
Number 15! Get used to being less connected. Decent Wi-Fi hotspots are pretty hard to come by in New Zealand, so you're either going to have to hunt out for the hotspots or use your cell phone, but we'll come back to that in just a moment.
Tip number 16 is declare.
Yes, when arriving in New Zealand, you will experience the strict biosecurity rules.
In your plane, you will be given a passenger arrival card where you can tick boxes to tell immigration officers and biosecurity officers what you have packed in your backpack. And if you're not sure, tick the boxes, just so you can avoid hefty fines for bringing in the country something that you should not have. We have heaps of tips about arriving in New Zealand on backpackerguide.nz, so make sure to check those out so you're well prepared. Tip number 17 is travel alone. Sure, it's pretty easy for us to say that since you've seen us traveling all around New Zealand together, but we both arrived in the country alone, and we had the time of our lives. No offense.
None taken, bitch. But it's true, traveling alone means that you get to make your gap year your own. It's an awesome confidence booster, and you are more likely to mingle with other solo travelers if you're alone yourself. You'll be called a so-called solo traveler, but by taking backpacker buses or staying in hostels or whatever, if you want your backpacking trip to be shared with other people, that's definitely doable. Number 18, get an 18 plus card.
Yes, there is only 3 types of ID to buy alcohol in New Zealand. It's your passport, an 18 plus card or a New Zealand driver license.
Nothing else will work, so don't even try.
Seriously, they check IDs almost in every bar in New Zealand. So what you want to do is to head to the post office, grab a form, fill it up and you'll get your 18 plus card in no time. We have a full guide about that on backpackerguide.nz and the link is below.
Number 19, have an open mind. Having an open mind and saying yes to things opens up so many opportunities. You'll find work faster, you're gonna do some activities that you never thought you did, and you might even end up doing a job which is completely random. The opportunities are endless.
You never know if you don't try, right?
Number 20, stick to your travel budget. There are so many temptations in New Zealand in terms of drink, food, skydives, so you really need to have discipline to stick to your budget. But there are loads of free activities you can do in New Zealand, and we have heaps of budgeting articles on Backpacker Guide New Zealand.
We recommend that you arrive in New Zealand with 5,500 New Zealand dollars plus enough funds for your return flight and your travel insurance. This will set you up for success. It's enough money for you to travel and have some fun before settling down, getting a job, saving money and, well, travel and have some fun.
On a similar note, number 21, eat well and cheaply. The food prices might be a little bit more expensive than what you're used to, but it's still doable to have a healthy and cheap diet in New Zealand. When you're changing your lifestyle and using more energy, this is when you need to eat fruit and veggies the most. Don't be that guy that eats noodles every day, you'll just get sick, so don't do it.
Tip number 22 is get an EFTPOS card. Now what the hell is an EFTPOS card? Oh, it's simply the New Zealand version of the debit card. Opening a bank account in New Zealand and getting a debit card will save you heaps on international transfer as well as transaction fee. Plus, having a New Zealand bank account is mandatory for those of you that may want to work in the country. So, in our book, it's a must-do. Speaking about work, tip number 23 is adapt to the New Zealand job market. Do not assume that employers will adapt to you, you have to adapt to them. New Zealand has different style CV, different style interviews, and different approach to work in general. So you want to go on backpackerguide.nz and check out all our articles on this subject. There is tips to perfect your CV, there is tips for your interviews, there is tips to how to job hunt. It's a mix between online and face-to-face. So make sure you check those out so you are well prepared and you get a job in no time. Tip number 24 is get off the beaten track. So yes, you've heard of Auckland, Queenstown, Wellington and Christchurch, alright, but New Zealand is so much more. There is heaps to be discovered.
Seriously, on New Zealand's biggest gap year where we did 365 activities in 365 days, we went to some of the most off the beaten track places out there, and that is where you get some of the best experiences.
So subscribe below, follow us and make your bucket list. And tip number 25 is load up on the free activities.
So back to budget. You're going to want to spend most of your time doing free activities in New Zealand, and hell, there are a lot of free stuff to do.
Hikes, crazy rock formation, waterfall, free gig, museum, art gallery, and some hostels even give you free kayak, free surfboard. You are spoiled for choice.
On Backpacker Guide New Zealand, we have loads of articles on free stuff to do all over the country, so get browsing.
26 on our list is it's okay to be a tourist. Alright, there is plenty of activity in New Zealand that you heard so much about and you're probably thinking, man, it's too touristy and I won't do them. But you know what? They're probably popular for a reason. So hop on that goddamn Milford Sound cruise and enjoy the stunning views. They are fucking amazing. You'll have a blast.
Number 27, plan according to your travel time. If you've given yourself a few months to travel or maybe just a couple of weeks, just don't try to do everything. Even we didn't manage to get absolutely everywhere, and we did 365 days on the road. New Zealand might be a small country, but getting around takes time. So make sure you plan accordingly, spend a good amount of time in selected places, but just don't try to go everywhere.
Number 28 is compare the cell phone providers. There are 4 companies in New Zealand: Skinny, Spark, Vodafone and 2 Degrees. Your phone habits are probably going to be very different than what you're currently using back home, so you have to take that in consideration when comparing them. You want to find a plan which is quite flexible as well, because you may change your phone habits throughout the year, from when you're traveling and meeting heaps of people on the road to when you're more settled, working and having a routine somewhere in New Zealand. So we've done a lot of comparisons and we link all our articles right down in the description below. Number 29 is being a savvy consumer. You need to be aware of your rights when traveling around New Zealand. You want to know what is GST, Good and Service Taxes. This applies to everything you buy in New Zealand and is usually included in the price. You want to pick up loyalty cards, especially from supermarkets. You want to compare prices for Fuel. For instance, don't get fuel near the Auckland airport, get it somewhere else. There's a couple of brands like Waitomo or Mackinac which are much cheaper than the other. You also want to collect vouchers from supermarkets and other places. There is heaps of little things that you want to know to be a savvy consumer while on the road in New Zealand. This is why we have a whole budget section on backpackerguide.nz, so you can start learning the ropes and tricks of the life here, so you make sure that you stretch those dollars further.
And finally, number 30, don't be afraid to move on. So you've got out of your comfort zone, you've traveled across the world, met some new friends, got a new job, a new place to live in New Zealand, and pretty soon you're gonna start feeling comfortable again and too comfortable to move on. Now, people find it much more satisfying to do short stints of work and travel rather than just staying in one place for 10 months and then traveling for a couple of months at the end. Just remember how easy it was to start anew the first time. Don't be afraid to move on and move on to your next destination.
So that's it for 30 tips for backpacking in New Zealand. We really hope that you find that super helpful and this will be something that you'll carry on throughout your whole trip. Backpackerguide.nz is a superb resource for you to plan, travel in New Zealand and make the most of your gap year here. Make sure to check it out and to bookmark it so you can use it throughout the year. You can also subscribe below so you can follow our New Zealand's biggest gap year, when we challenge ourselves to do 365 activities in New Zealand in only 365 days. This is absolutely insane and that should help you make the best bucket list ever. Kia ora!
Kia ora!